everyone, this is Melissa, and I'm the Talkative Introvert. In this episode, I'm going to talk about therapy. But before we get into that, more recently, I've always been asking people to please rate and review me on Apple Podcasts, but more recently I mentioned that if you do leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, I'll read them out loud on future episodes. But I realized I never did that for the ones I already got. So I wanted to just read one off, probably at the beginning of like every episode. I don't have a lot. I only have 5. So it's really not that much. But I just want to read it out loud and just really thank the person who left a review. And I want to thank all of you who left a review or a rating. It really helps the show and help to get more out there, I guess. So this first one, it's by HSBSBSDB. So I think they're just initials. But it says, "This podcast is simple and chill. I like that there is a podcast for everything, and this is it. I opened my mind and listened, and I actually learned a lot about myself and about introverts in general. I feel it depends on the situation, but definitely I can see myself being a social introvert, but never thought of myself as an introvert. Cheers to introverts. Take a listen. You won't regret it. Heather from Bring the Mio podcast." So thanks, Heather. I really appreciate the review. I'll read the others in the future. So please, if you like the show, if you enjoy the podcast, please go rate and review it on Apple Podcasts. I'd really appreciate it. All right. So back on topic. So if you listen to my last solo episode, I think it's like the one about my podcast voice. I should know this. I should know my episodes. But yeah, the one where I talk about finding my podcast voice, I mentioned that not everything I want to talk about has to deal with being an introvert. As much as I love being an introvert, and that's kind of how I got or started with this podcast, it's not all I want to talk about. And there's a lot of like other subjects I want to talk about too that I'm really excited to talk about and can't wait to like do some research and, write out my outline for it or my show notes, whatever you want to call it. And so I realized though that some subjects that I want to talk about, I can't really talk about unless I first address like therapy. And so, yeah. So I'm in therapy. I guess I should start off with that. But I didn't want to talk about this at first because there is a lot of stigma about being in therapy. I didn't really want people to find out too. Like I didn't want family to find out about it. And there's not all cultures also accept therapy. Like when they think of therapy, they think, oh my God, this person's like extremely depressed. This person is suicidal. This person has like an array of mental health issues, or like it's like always intense and extreme. Like people don't think of therapy, like they think of therapy as just something like the last resort and it's really, really bad. Like there's something wrong with your life. And that's not always the case. That may be the case, sure. But it doesn't mean like I'm extremely depressed and suicidal or anything like that. And like I was kind of iffy about like this coming out because then if family members do listen, I don't know if they do. Like, I don't know who listens or who doesn't listen. Like, I can speculate based on like the location that, is showed on Buzzsprout, but I don't know for sure. And, but I'm fine. You guys, I'm not like clinically depressed or suicidal or anything like that. It was something I just wanted to try out actually. So, but yeah, so I wasn't going to talk about it at first. I wasn't going to bring it up, especially like this, being so public. But honestly, what changed my mind is that like therapy should be normalized. Like it's fine if you're in therapy. Like no one cares. You should be proud that you're taking care of yourself. And if you do feel like something is wrong or you need someone to talk to and you don't have that support system, then good for you for finding an outside source that can help you with that. There's nothing wrong with it. There shouldn't be any stigma. Like people should be okay with it and okay for seeking help because you don't have to be alone and like try to figure out something on your own, especially if you don't understand it. If you don't understand something that's happening with you and it's really affecting you and your mental health, like go seek help. It's fine. It's totally fine. There's nothing like I'm not extremely unhappy with my life or anything. I do think I live a pretty good life and a pretty happy life. But there are some things that I just want to, like figure out, like have a better understanding of. And I've mentioned this before, but I did get my degree in a soft science. Like I did family and consumer science, and it has a lot to do, like we did learn a lot about like mental health and how the brain develops and how the brain works, and how and therapy is a big part of people's like development and growth and all that. And therapy can really help people, and I don't see why anyone should not do it just because like it's a stigma, or maybe your family or your culture doesn't like recognize it, or they deem it as something like as a last resort or something like that. I don't know. But not everyone also has a support system. Not everyone has a confidant. Not everyone has like someone they can really just fully express themselves. And not everyone feels comfortable talking to their friends and family about certain issues, and that's fine. That's what the therapist is there for, is someone to talk to. And a lot of times too, like when you do talk about your problems with someone, like say you do have a really good support system, you do have a confidant or like a best friend or someone that you do talk to, a lot, well, I don't want to say, well, a lot of times people tend to listen to respond and not listen to understand, if that makes sense. So like people sometimes want to just fix something for you, or like tell you what you need to do, or tell you what you should do, or how you should do something, when sometimes you just want to talk about your feelings and just want to talk, like express yourself, and you don't necessarily need the solution or anything. You just want someone to listen and to understand and to like kind of, just be there for you, not try to fix your problems all the time. And so a therapist does that. They don't, tell you what you should or shouldn't do. At least like good therapist shouldn't tell you what you should or shouldn't do. They kind of guide you in a way to help you understand your own feelings and your own thoughts and why you feel this way and why you think this way. And like, cause really at the end of the day, like it's up to you. It's your choices, you decide what you want to do with your life. And it's also kind of nice to talk to a complete stranger because they stay unbiased, like the focus is on you. They're not concerned about like the other people in your family, your friends, or in your group. It's, it's about you. It's about your issues and your problems and your feelings. And, it's nice that you can just talk freely about your emotions and what you're feeling. Because, another thing, like people, like I said, people like to listen to respond and not listen to understand. And like another problem with talking to people about your problems is that sometimes they make it about them. They make it about like, well, like if someone had the similar situation as you or similar problem, they like to talk about themselves and how they overcame the same problem. And, like that's great and dandy for you, but like everyone is different. Not everyone's the same. So not everyone's going to deal with the same problem the same way. So it's nice when it's you and the therapist, it's like one-on-one. It's about you and your problems. And that the focus is on you, and like they're there to help you. And it's not like a conversation with a friend or family member. And I'm not saying that like all my friends and family members do this, but that's the tendency, and that's normal. Like I do that too sometimes. Like I don't always listen to understand, and I'm like really trying to do that too, because some people just want to talk to you, and not everyone like needs a solution to their problem. They just want to tell you the problem. And another reason why I changed my mind about talking about this too is because if I'm endorsing it, if I'm like because I do recommend it to other people, and I tell people like it's great. Like even though people don't know I'm in therapy, I still like endorse it to them. Like, oh, you should think about going to therapy. And so like, why should I endorse it, but then at the same time be ashamed of it and hide it? You know what I mean? It's like very hypocritical, I guess. And hopefully this episode, like, even though I have a very small group of listeners, hopefully I can help make you feel good about it. Like if you're thinking about it, but you're unsure, you should just do it. Just try it, especially if you have the means to do it. Like that's kind of another thing, is that not everyone has the means to do it. But if you do, like, you should take full advantage of it, especially if you feel like you're going through something and talking to like a friend or family member just isn't cutting it and you just really need that professional help, then you should totally take advantage of it. Like right now we're in the middle of a pandemic and social unrest and whatever else there is in 2020. And a lot of employers are actually offering it. And they're offering like free sessions and free resources to get you started. So, go check with your employer and see if that's an option for you. So that's kind of how I got started, actually. I started this year at the start of the lockdown. So here in California, we started lockdown in March. So I think like a month after that, maybe, or 2 months. I can't remember. But anyways, my work, they sent out, they always have a health newsletter kind of thing that they send out like every month. And I think it's like the month after the pandemic and the lockdown, they sent this newsletter that stated like that we can actually get free sessions. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I've always thought about doing therapy. I just never, it's just in the past, it was just too expensive and work didn't offer it before, or at least I wasn't really aware of it before. And I didn't really look into it. But because like with this new job and like the fact that they're offering it because of COVID and all that, and it was free. So I figured like, what's the harm of starting it now? Because it's free. It doesn't impact me financially and it may be beneficial in the long run. So I was like, why not? So, and it kind of all started too because I went down this rabbit hole after I watched this like Demi Lovato, that documentary she did. But I won't really get into that because that's like a whole other episode I want to do. And that's like a longer conversation. So I won't get into like why I started or like why I'm in it now and like what I'm doing in therapy now. But yeah, so my work, they offered free sessions. And so I was like, you know what, let's try it out. What's the harm? You know what? If I didn't like it, I'll just quit. So my work offered free sessions with Talkspace. So if you don't know what Talkspace is, it's all virtual. So because we're in lockdown, they didn't offer free like in-person therapy, or I think I don't, now I can't remember. They might have offered in-person therapy, but because we were in lockdown, I figured Talkspace is probably the best way to go because I wasn't about to go into the clinic or or I don't know what it's called, the therapist's office, whatever it's called. So Talkspace seemed great. It was a good like step, or it's a good like trial into therapy, if you will. So I'll talk about like the pros and cons in Talkspace, but basically it's all virtual. It's like texting, so you can like download the app or you can have it on your computer and you're just like IMing each other back and forth. So it's not like you're sitting down on a couch and someone's like asking, how do you feel about that? It's not person in person. You can do video sessions, but I believe those cost money. Like I think I have like one free video session, but I'm not like a big FaceTime person anyway, so I don't know if I'm gonna use it. Maybe like I don't know, like if I want to just have a conversation rather than texting. But As you guys know, I'm an introvert, so introverts typically like texting rather than calling. So that's like one of the pros, right? So the pros of Talkspace is that it is texting. So that's kind of great. I like that it's on my own terms. I can respond when I want to, whenever I want to. It's not like a scheduled, like if you do the in-person one, it's like a scheduled session, right? And you only have like maybe an hour, half an hour, whatever it is. You only have like a set time to talk and then that's it. And then you're done and then you have to wait until the next session. And who knows, like it's different for everybody, but Talkspace allows you to talk to your therapist like on a daily basis, like 24/7. It doesn't guarantee though that they'll respond at like 1 a.m. or anything like that, but you can at least respond anytime you want and then they'll respond back, during their work hours. So that's kind of nice. Like I like that you don't have to go in anywhere. There's not like the set schedule. So I don't have to like work around my works or like Talkspace, I can work around my work schedule. But whereas like going into the office, like I'm pretty sure it's usually around, I mean, I don't know. I haven't done an in-person therapy session, so I don't know how it works, but I'm assuming they're like regular office hours, right? Maybe they're a little later, but that is like the great thing about Talkspace. It's just whenever you want to. And you don't have to do the FaceTime thing. And then you get partnered with a therapist that like is specialized in the specific like thing, like subject that you want to talk about. And so you can pick your therapist. And then if you don't like your therapist, you can like switch out your therapist. And it's available like no matter where you are too. Like I said, you can download the app. So again, like the in-person, you have to drive to their office or what have you. But with like the Talkspace app, you can pretty much do it from wherever. You could be home. You could be like out and about. And like, if you think of something, you can just, text them. So that's kind of the great thing about it. And that's kind of why I like it. I mean, it really helps me like, it helps me to be in therapy when I feel like it's right to be in therapy. Does that make sense? Like it's on my time, it's like when I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling, I can talk about it at that moment. Does that make sense? I don't know why I'm asking because I know you guys can't respond. But yeah, so those are the pros. I like it. And since it's free for me, I don't know how much it costs, but I did read that Talkspace is actually a lot cheaper, like way cheaper than actually going into the office or into the clinic, whatever it's called. I'm going to call it the office. So, I guess it's more eco-friendly, or economically friendly. And so it might be, a good choice for you if it's something within your means and you can't like actually spend money on, seeing a therapist in person. So, but the cons is that's texting. So, there's times where like sometimes I wish there was an instant response, like a back and forth, kind of like a conversation. And that is something you could do with the video chat. However, like I mentioned earlier, the video chat isn't covered for me, at least. I only have like one free session. So I feel like I need to like save it, for like an emergency or like I don't know. But it does cost more money to do video sessions. And again, that's one of those things, just like an in-person one, you have to schedule it and you only have like that session, whether it's a 30-minute, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, you have a limit on what you can talk about, or how much you can talk about, sorry. So it is kind of frustrating sometimes that it is texting because it's not super responsive. My therapist has other people and I'm sure she probably does in-person ones as well. I mean, I don't know during this time if she's doing in-person ones, but like she can't like be on her phone or on her computer the entire time and just texting me back and forth, And so, it's not this ongoing, or it's not like this, person-to-person conversation that you would have if you went into the office. But I still like the texting aspect. But so texting can be a pro and a con. It just really depends on like how fast you want a response back. Then another con is is also one of the pros is the fact that you can just respond whenever you want. So with that, you can also not respond whenever you want. So sometimes I get kind of lazy because sometimes she does ask hard questions and then I just feel lazy, or not lazy, but like I know I should answer them because it'll help me in the long run to really understand why I feel or think a certain way. But then sometimes I just don't want to. Like I don't want to respond to it. But I do. I still do. And she'll like check up on me if I don't respond like after a couple of days or something. So you're not forced to talk. So like in a live session, you're not really forced to, but you're obligated to. Like, don't waste your money if you're not going to respond back, right? So, like, I feel like if you're in an in-person session, you have that obligation to answer it and answer the question right there and then. But that's also kind of the nice thing about the texting is that you can sit on the question. So, like in a person-to-person session, again, you have that obligation to respond right there and then. And because it's a timed session, like you don't really have a lot of time to think on it. So for those hard questions that she gives me, like I can read it, sit on it, and, give myself like a day to process it. And then I can respond with a appropriate, well, I don't say appropriate, but with like a well thought out response and not just like on the spot kind of response. And so I kind of like that about it. But it does make me kind of lazy and not want to respond sometimes or not think about it. But yeah, so those are kind of like the pros and cons in Talkspace. It just really depends on you and what you like and what you prefer. I feel like Talkspace is awesome for introverts because you don't have to be in person and it is texting and it is on your time. So if you're like socially exhausted for the day, but you have a therapy session scheduled, like you may not have the energy to talk to your therapist. Whereas with Talkspace, it's you decide when to respond or when to talk to your therapist. So that's what I like about it. And then, so I'll link Talkspace, the website for Talkspace in the description. So actually, apparently for a podcast, it's not the description, it's the show notes. But I don't know. I think I'm just used to description because that's like what YouTubers say. But in the show notes, I will link Talkspace, and then my work actually transitioned over. I mean, I still have my free sessions in Talkspace because that's what I started with. But people who are starting now, I guess, are doing BetterHelp, which I think is the same thing. It's the same concept. It's virtual texting and FaceTime. So it's not like an actual person-to-person session. So I will link that as well. I don't know anything about BetterHelp since I started with Talkspace. But I'm pretty sure it's basically the same thing. It's just virtual therapy. And so go check those out. It'll be in the show notes. And I hopefully that can like help you guys out, like learn a little bit about therapy and how it works and how these two websites work too. But yeah, so that's my little story in therapy. I didn't go over really why I'm doing therapy or why I started, but that's because I want to do a separate episode on that. I feel like that's kind of a fairly long conversation as well. And I'm pretty excited to talk about that because I feel like that episode will really resonate, like not only with introverts, but also with women. I mean, men deal with it too, but I think a big portion of it is women. So I won't get into that right now, but that will be in a future episode coming up. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, thanks for listening to my little therapy story. I know it's not a whole lot. I just want to kind of briefly touch on it just so that I can get the ball running on these other subjects I want to talk about. And honestly, like it feels good to have it out there. and it feels empowering. And like, it makes me excited to be able to talk about those other topics now. Because therapy isn't something you should be ashamed about, isn't something like anyone should be like, I mean, you could keep it a secret. That's your prerogative, obviously, or your prerogative, your prerogative. I don't want you to feel like you should like express it to the world and like scream it out on the top of your lungs unless that's something you want to do. But I also feel like if somehow someone finds out, like, you shouldn't be ashamed of it because it's okay. Especially right now, like, there's so much going on in the world. Like, it's hard not to be like, to not be in therapy. I feel like there's just so much going on this year. But yeah, so it feels good to have it out there. And I hope that you feel empowered to, to do so also, and ask for that help if you really needed it. So that is my therapy story. And if you listen to my previous episode, I am going to put in a little voting PSA in there because it's election year. It's voting season. It's, time to pick our new president or current president, whoever you're voting for. I will include links in the show notes. I included Ballotpedia. Ballotpedia is pretty awesome because they strive to be unbiased. That's like their biggest thing, is that they try to just provide you with facts, which is what I like, because media sucks and you shouldn't believe anything that media talks about because they have their own agenda. I know I probably sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I hate media. Like, I really do, because there's proof of media like spinning the story and like having it cater to their agenda. Like, it's a known fact that they do that. Media they twist words and they twist stories, and I don't believe in media, and I try not to watch the news very often because it is very fear-mongering, and they try to pick at your heartstrings, and I don't know. I don't trust it. So I like Ballotpedia a lot because they do strive to just give you the facts. And I have been reading a lot of their articles, and I am part of their newsletter, their email newsletter. And so they do a pretty good job of just providing facts. And so far, I haven't really seen a whole lot of biased articles. There may be there because, people are just people. They have their thoughts and feelings. So, but try as much as possible to look for info that's unbiased so that you can make the decision for yourself, So don't let media sway your feelings or sway your vote or sway how you should or shouldn't vote. Just, understand like your own morals and your own ethics, and determine whether you believe in the certain president that you want to pick, and believe in the certain like props there are like in your area. So, that's another great thing about Ballotpedia, is that you can put in your address and they'll tell you exactly what's going to be in your ballot. So in case people are new to voting, you don't just vote for the president this year. There's also a lot of local stuff. So read up on those propositions, check out Ballotpedia to get what props are going to be in your ballot, and then also any other like local elected officials. So that's really important, and they try to give you the facts on that too, and they'll give you like the whole thing, the actual like document on the proposition, and they try to simplify it for you because it is really difficult. People like to create very confusing props, which I get why they do that, because they want it to sound good, which is another thing I hate. Like, just simplify the thing. Like, why do you have to make it, like, don't lie. Just tell me what you want in the prop, Like, there's a score, actually. There's a readability score on some of these props. And it's like, why? So ridiculous. Just make it simple. Anyways, that's my little rant on that. So go check that out. And then I also linked, I think it's vote.org. So you can check if you're registered, and if you're not registered, please go register. Vote.gov, sorry, not .org. vote.gov. And yeah, so you can check if you're registered and all that. And I think some states are still open for registration. So hopefully it's not too late for you. So please go check that out. Even if it's too late for you to vote this year, we don't just vote every 4 years. You have your local elections. So you can still register and then be a part of those local elections instead. So that's my little voting PSA. I just want to put that in there because it is voting season, and this one's a big one, and this is the one usually everyone votes in. Well, not everyone, only not even half of America votes, but who knows? Maybe this year it'll be more just because of the year we're having. We'll see. We'll see who's president at the end of this year. Oh man, I am not excited for that. But anyways, so thanks you guys. Thanks so much for listening. And I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you listening to my little therapy session and my little voting PSA. And if you enjoy the show and want to stay in the know, please follow me on social media. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. You can also check out my website at the Talkative Introvert Podcast. All of my information will be on there as well as in the show notes. If you like this show, as I mentioned earlier, please, please, please rate and review me on Apple Podcasts. If you leave a review, I'll make sure to feature it in a future episode. And I'll even read the bad ones. I'll read all of them. Well, it depends. Maybe I might have to it depends how bad it is. I might have to censor some of it. I don't know. Hopefully it's not that bad. But anyways, thanks so much, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode.